In this video, we look at changing interface settings in Blender. Let's get started. In our previous video, we saw how these initial settings such as left select, play pause, or the theme could be adjusted on setup of Blender. This was just an illustration of the numerous customizable features in Blender. Note that these options won't be available after the initial setup but can be still accessed in user preferences. To begin, we can left click into the scene and close the splash screen. Incidentally, to open back up the splash screen, come up to the Blender logo and find that button here. To open preferences, come to the edit menu and down to preferences. We can begin up top in the interface tab, specifically focusing on the resolution scale. By clicking and dragging in the resolution scale field, you'll notice the text on screen enlarging. This not only aids you in following the videos, but also helps me see what buttons I'm pushing. Adjust that if you feel it improves Blender's ease of use. If you do change a setting, but later decide it's not what you expected and need to change it back, don't panic. Simply hover the cursor over the field and press the backspace key to reset the value back to its default. In this case, a value of 1. For this resolution scale setting, I'm going to left click into the field and set this to 1.3. I find this amount increases the text sufficiently for me and should make it easier for you to follow along. Next are the tooltip settings below. In Blender, if you hover the cursor on a button or property, will prompt information to appear, providing a short description. Additionally, the Python tooltip shows the Python reference, useful for getting tips about buttons and properties. Further on down here, we have translation. If English is not your first language, then below you can change that from the drop-down. Then have that effect tooltips interface and new data settings. The remaining default settings are fine here. Next, we can move on to the Themes tab. Up top, from the preset drop-down, choose a preset theme from the menu. This will change the entire interface color scheme. In addition to that, each interface item can have their color properties modified using the menus here, allowing you adjust the color of every aspect of the Blender interface. Let's move on to the Input tab. When working in Blender, a 3-button mouse is recommended, but a 2-button mouse can also work by enabling this option, Emulate 3-button mouse. This emulates the middle mouse button functionality using the Alt key and left mouse button. Enable this option only if you have a 2-button mouse. The middle mouse button is used to rotate and it can be difficult to work in Blender without that functionality. Next is the Navigation tab. The first setting we can enable is Orbit Around selection. This makes your selected object the center point when orbiting in object mode or when in edit mode, whatever part of the mesh you have selected. Really important enhancement to navigation that allows you to get in close and work more accurately. The second option here is Auto Perspective. This one I usually disable. This setting automatically changes the view to perspective after you leave an orthographic view. I prefer to remain in an orthographic view and manually shift my perspective if needed. Feel free to leave it at default, it's just a setting I like to disable. The final setting in navigation is Zoom to Mouse Position. This sets the cursor as the target when zooming, another great enhancement for navigation. Next, we can open the Key Map tab. We previously looked at these on Initial Setup. Up top, you can choose a Blender key configuration or industry standard. If you have come from another 3D software, you might prefer to use that setup. Setups like Maya or Max. I'd recommend the Blender configuration as it's set up for convenience and speed, and also will make it easier to follow along with the course. Next, you can also specify left or right selection. For the spacebar action, choose between Play, Tools and Search. The default Play works well as it's industry standard. Shortcuts are a major productivity enhancer in Blender, and down below are all the key bindings listed. If we expand the 3D view and 3D view global, every shortcut is listed for the 3D view. The first binding here is to Set 3D Cursor. Here we can see when the right mouse button and the Shift key are pressed, this command executes. This is where you can discover the available shortcuts or change shortcuts. If we scroll down to the very bottom of this tab, here you can actually add and assign your own shortcuts for the different commands. As we are seeing from user preferences, Blender is very customizable. I usually leave these at default in the 3D view as the shortcuts work well. However, I do add additional shortcuts within the video editor to help speed up my workflow. Let's move on to the System tab. The first setting we can look at are the number of undo steps. As we all know, these are really important in any program. In Blender especially, you can use up your lives very quickly. Increasing these, however, will lead to higher memory usage. 256 is the max, this value can be increased, and I usually set this to 100. That number generally provides enough headway that you feel confident experimenting at times. Next, we can open the Save and Load tab. Here we can look at the recent file number. This is the number of recent files that get displayed in the file menu. I find 10 too few when trying to open recent files and usually increase this to the max 30. Finally, we have the file paths. This is where you set up the source folders for the different file types. These include fonts, textures, scripts, sounds, and output files. That way, Blender will open directly into these folders. In the render area, the images you render out can also have the default folder set up here. Blender does create a temp folder by default, but you can specify one here. Applications can also be linked. An image editor such as Photoshop or GIMP can be set up to open from Blender. Finally are the asset libraries. Here you can set up paths to external asset libraries. Essentially, these are blend files that store assets. These can be models, materials, brushes, lights, cameras. Multiple libraries can be added that allow assets be dragged and drop into the scene. There will be a video on using asset libraries later in the course. That's it for the settings. Blender will automatically save any changes you make in preferences in future. That is, once the Save Preferences checkbox is enabled in here. Now the next time you open Blender, these changes will have been saved. We can close preferences by clicking the X. The final thing is to save the file. You hear this with all applications, but do make sure and save your file often. Also, save incrementally. Blender provides a useful feature for saving incrementally, so no excuses. It's also a really good habit to get into. We can first come to File and Save. This opens a file browser. Another useful habit is to set up a project folder for the course. That way you can save all files in the same location. So let's navigate to a location where you will store all files relating to the course. Here I've created a new project folder. Inside, for example, I have the asset folder from the course resources. Later, as the course progresses, more folders for the different file types can be added. These folders can be created when needed, but the important thing is to keep all project files together at the same permanent location. That way, files aren't deleted or moved independently and links don't get broken. So now is a good time to set up your project folder. Name the folder something you will recognize. Inside this project folder, we can create a new folder to store blend files. Rename this one Blend Files. Double click inside here. In the name field, choose something that makes sense, but make sure to add an underscore 001. Having the underscore 001 not only helps you recognize the most recent file, but also makes incrementing easier. Now click Save Blend File. Then, to use the great feature Blender has for incrementing files, come back up to File, and this time choose Save As. This opens back up the file browser. The name field is highlighted red to indicate this name is already used, and we'll save over this file unless the name is changed. At the back of the name field is a plus and minus. If we click the plus, the suffix underscore 001 increases to underscore 002. That way, as you follow the course, you can easily save incrementally. Really important. If for some reason your file becomes corrupt or you encounter another issue with the file, having saved incrementally and often will allow you to take a step back without losing hours of work. We can click Save As. Now you know how that works. The next time all you need to do is come to File and down here to Save Incrementally. Blender will increase that file number by 1 automatically.